This is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative take about the world around me. So in this episode, I am going to talk about the aspects of politics and music. And then I'm going to break it down by giving my thoughts, and then also along with that, with reading, presenting peer research about this, and then in further depth on this, I'm going to give a theory, a actual, not like a theory as I thought from my opinion, but as a theory that is in practice from a mass communication point of view is what I'm referring to. All right, so let's dive in. Okay, so me gathering from all the research that I found about the aspects of politics and music is quite interesting. So it really clarifies a lot, but also is quite interesting with the aspect of research, how it's involved. And how when it was initially done, it was stated that it's unfortunate that more research isn't sought after or isn't conducted in this type of field, in this type of conductive understanding about music. Might I say that point? And so what it says and what it states, and then of course I'm going to get in the depth of and read the facts about everything. It's really very fascinating and interesting. So for instance, it states that it's not feasible, and nor is it and pretty much I'm, paraphrasing. So to add on to that, it's not ethical to say that largely certain political ideals are connected to the type of music that, there's levels to it. And then, people, everything is complex. And so you can't generalize in that fashion. And that's quite interesting because it's being honest with the aspect that you need to understand the reality of how people think, and to go beyond stereotypical aspects of what is expected of someone who listens to certain genres. And then needless to say, to expand on to this, it also opens up the question of misinterpretation of things, how that leads to a certain relationship and a certain appeal about music and in the essence of politics. So, for instance, it was quite fascinating. So they broke it down and to saying about the essence of not that essentially music can either be background noise for a lot of people or a thing that people aren't really paying attention to, the lyrics, and so things get misinterpreted. And so a really good example of this to bring everything together, and then like I said, I'm going to read the details about it, is the song Hey Y'all by Outkast. So, and this is from my, personal observation of my example. And then, of course, there is, other people that have done examples about this. So, initially, when you hear the song, if you're just paying attention to the sound alone, it's very upbeat, it's very catchy. And so it seems like it's just a happy-go-lucky song that gets you on the floor, that gets you wanting to dance, things like that. But when you listen to the lyrics and you start to hear what the Andre 3000 or how his name is now, I think it's different now, but it's a very painful song. This is talking about the reality of the situation of a love that's lost, so to speak, or love, the love that is not, to put it plainly, love that's conditional. The after effects and the effects of what happens when you're in a relationship like that. And then the sort of eternal question of looking towards stability and trying to figure out things, and then asking the aspect of the root of how this relationship is to be, and what's the future of it. And so when you notice this and you hear this, everything is different. And it's quite interesting because it was an artist, a singer, who is well done what he did. He embraces and interprets this song really well, to where it's a soulful blues sort of song, because with the pain and anguish that is really in the message of the song. And so it's even interesting because that Andre brings it out in the lyrics too, that y'all are not even listening, you just want to dance. So he understands the aspect of that people aren't really hearing the lyrics. And there's also begs another question: was that intentional? Because playing with the aspect of that they know, that people don't really pay attention to lyrics, and people interpret things the way they interpret. They come with their preconceived notions about songs. And so this is interesting too, because it takes on another path with politics and music. So particularly with politicians choosing campaign music to represent what they stand as far as the American people, and then going outward. It also goes outward to another country about the aspect of politics and music too, and how things are sought after as far as the reality of how they see music within politics of their realm. And so the misinterpretation about what the song actually means it actually, what they think the song means versus what it actually is. And then another good example is the aspect going back and standing on from what I noticed about the punk rock music and how that came to be, how that rise came to be, and how that leaked into the American culture. But it's quite interesting how its roots originally start, from what I understand. And please feel free in the comments to, give me feedback about it. But from what I gather and what I understand, that its roots is from Britain, and it's, out of the aspect of what was going on in the upheaval of the going against the Margaret Thatcher and the Parliament and everything, and going against the monarchy and stuff like that, and about the reality situation of what people were dealing with day to day, and the aspects of poverty and all that kind of reality situation from a British perspective, and then the class system and how, the upheaval of that. And so it's quite interesting because on top of this, I heard that, I heard the analysis of that, that from this era, the Sex Pistols is seen as the go-to band as far as anarchy in the punk rock realm. But it's quite interesting because I've heard that some people say that the Clash was actually more of more radical and more punk rock than the Sex Pistols. And the reason is, from my point of view, I think, is because, typically what the Sex Pistols were focusing in on was the angst and anarchy, stuff like that. But the Clash moved in a whole different level to where they became more mainstream, because they started talking about more political issues as far as the aspect of oil and the disbursement of oil from Rock the Casbah, from that aspect of the elements of that song. But, that's only my interpretation. But, again, it's important to know the realities of what the song is. And then also how it's quite interesting, Lost in the Supermarket, the mundane aspect of noticing what things, the consumerism, getting into the aspect of the consumerism and how that takes effect on people. And so I can see that. All right, so here we go. I'm going to get into the in-depth study about this. All right, so this study came from the York College of Pennsylvania. And so I'm going to talk about the results in the discussion, and then go back to talk about the aspects of everything else that I had stated previously. So it says the breakdown of political ideology and party identification, for that matter, is skewed highly liberal. And they were saying that it's skewed highly liberal because they polled people, asked people on the college students, college campus, and particularly in the population of this research, they asked 21 students. So the results of both political ideology questions can be seen in the chart. So in the chart, it's broken down like this. So it's questions from very liberal all the way to very conservative. And so very liberal was 4, liberal was 7, and somewhat liberal was 6, somewhat conservative was 3, and conservative only 1, and very conservative resulted to 0. And so this resulted to 0, of course, 0%, then 1 to 5%, 14% for 3, 6, 29%, 7, 33% to 19% for 4. And so the response to the party identification question was either if you were Republican, Independent, Democrat, or other, resulted to this. So it stated that it was only one that stated that they are Republican, which was ranking at 5%. So 8 that stated that they were Independent, which was at 38%. And Democrat 11, which is 52%, and the other was just 5%. All right, so it went on to state, in order to determine music preference, the respondents were given 10 genres to rank, and order of the respondents were given. So it was being most favorite, and which would rank as 10, and being least favorite, the genres included. The surveys are as follows: rock, pop, metal, EDM, soul, blues, and folk. So rap / pop, religious, and country. So for the sake of conservative space, each genre ranking, it was saying that the top and the bottom 3 were listed. So coming out at the top of the rankings was rock, which was 8, and 1 votes, then pop and rap and hip hop, which was rock, and 8 numbers 1 votes, then pop, rap, hip hop was 5 votes apiece. So at the other end of the spectrum was religious music, which 10 last place votes, then metal was 5 last place votes, with country and EDM tying at 2 last place votes, with country and EDM tying at 2. So after the raw data was tabulated and the necessary coding changes were made, so a correlation of the analysis was conducted. So all of this, the ideology responses were coded a positive number, which will indicate a correlation between the genres and the liberal ideology. And so it also wants to state, while a negative number will indicate a correlation between the genre and a conservative ideology. So it's quite interesting because it also stated that in the beginning of the realms of what their anticipation was about the aspect of their theory of how they saw music breaking down to. And hold on, let me get into the depths of that. And I'm going to go and read the intro for that. So as it is found out that pop was at 0.445, which was positive. Rock was 2.16. Rap, hip hop 0.182. Religious 0.67. Blues 0.33. Soul was negative at 0.04. EDM negative. Folk negative. Metal negative. Country negative. So first off, I'm going to go backwards by the conclusion and then go back to the an initial interpretation of about their thoughts and hypothesis about what they want, why they wanted to do this research, and how they viewed their interpretation about music. So it says, in conclusion, based off of both the qualitative and quantitative research, there definitely seems to be at least a correlation relationship between certain genres of music and political ideology. The observational evidence that links music with politics is compelling, and once the persuasive notion of music mind-altering powers is added into the equation. So it says, the argument gets even stronger. Some of the previous research, as well as aspects of my original research, says back up the correlation link between music and political ideology. Says several genres have been found to have a correlation relationship, at least the very least, with certain ideological positions. From my study, pop, country, rock, and metal all correlate significantly with each ideology. However, it is very important to note that none of the aforementioned studies or research have proved causality. Only correlations linked has been discovered. At this point, it would be irresponsible, as I was stating, so, in a roundabout way, in a more, synopsis of this way of saying, not roundabout way, it's just in ill faith to say that, to make generalizations about somebody. Oh, you must think this way because you listen to this certain type of music. But as I also begs the question too of how does imagery, which is stated in this research, how does imagery also play into the aspect of the artist and the songs? So particularly going on with pop and hip hop and things of that nature and rap. So predominantly with, of course, there is exceptions to the rule in pop and hip hop and rap. So predominantly with pop is typically on the surface level, the sexual innuendos and things of that nature typically is what is formed out of the aspect of pop. And so, but it goes on to the aspect that it doesn't it typically is about, the aspect of pleasure and the aspect of good times, feeling good, things like that. And then with hip hop and rap, it's typically centered around street culture. And, of course, there's nuance to that where there is hip hop artists, rap artists, particularly Lupe Fiasco, when he came out, and he was typically, and then going Pharrell too, when these two artists were out, they talked about different, the skater culture notion of what, and so it wasn't something that was typically seen in these genres of music. And so, but needless to say, hip hop and rap is, like I was mentioning about street culture and everything else. And then, unfortunate reality of being appeased with degradation, with deviant behavior. And so that changes the representation of music, of what the lyrics are saying, when you cross paths with what is actually said, is what actually heard in the lyrics of the song versus, the other aspect of asking the artist, what are you saying about this? It's quite interesting. And so, I'll get into depth about that too. So it says, at this point, it would be irresponsible to claim that genres of music can cause a shift in political ideology. In order for that claim to be made, additional research explained below needs to be conducted further. Further research, given the fact that there is relatively little research and that none of the research could establish causation. So it says, I believe that further research, this person stated, I believe that further research into the topic is needed. Specifically, further research needs to be conducted in a manner that may be able to prove a causal relationship between certain genres and political ideology. Perhaps this research could come into the form of a study of teenagers whose minds are starting to form their political beliefs, who are randomly assigned a certain genre to listen to extensively. The impact of the genre could be clearly seen as a causal mechanism of ideology then. So it goes on to say, whether the method further research should be conducted in this area to conclusively prove that certain music genre dedicated particular political leaning. And so what they're focusing in on teenagers, so this person begged the question that teenagers typically don't listen to the lyrics. But I would also say, I think it would be also a good thing for research to get different age groups too, older, a range of different people, different nationalities too, but also ages. So you have that generational aspect of music and interpretation too, and in how particularly how these songs and then genres of songs impact them, and how also ask different questions about, and I would like to know what you guys all think, different questions about how they see songs. Is songs just a means to an end for what you already believe, or it just you see songs as a billboard to relate to how you see the world? I think it's ask questions like that, open-ended questions like that, but different questions to get the real reality of how you interpret music. And then also, how does that relate to how you see things politically in the world around you? Like, what does that mean to you? Okay, so, and then, it's also quite interesting to see, the aspect that is, do you see music and politics as two separate entities, two separate issues? They're not all, do they commingle at the same aspect? What it actually, what do you feel about music, think about music? So, the researcher's name is Ryan Mayfield. So I'm reading from the abstract now. So that's generally like the intro of a research paper, so to speak, to lead the foreground of why they did the research and what's it all about. So over the course of the history, two stalwarts of public life, music, and politics have developed on intimate bonds. Where the political actions can be found, music will accompany it. Where the music is observed, politics would be accompanied with it as well. So this trend has been observed from the ancient times of Plato, who warned of the dangers that music possessed to the state through the 20th century. So it's interesting because this person also stated that the reason why Plato saw the dangers in music because of the primitive nature of it to alter someone's mind is the aspect of the call to action to do something. Like music initially innates that sensory of call to action. All right. So here we go. Also working in tandem with this trend is the persuasive opinion that music can significantly alter the minds of listeners. With these two ideas in mind, I hypothesized first that listening to specific genres of music would significantly influence the political ideology of the listener. The secondary set of hypotheses are as follows: that rap, hip-hop, folk, blues, and soul genres will be positively correlated with a liberal ideology, that metal, gospel, and country will be positively associated with a conservative ideology, and that pop, rock, and EDM will not be significantly correlated with any political ideology. Though both qualitative and quantitative methods, this paper helps to fill the gap in research regarding this topic by discovering a correlation between music genres and political ideologies of the listener. And so, again, I think it kind of proved that point, but, it would have been better, as they stated, to have more research and to, as I was saying, to go outside of college campuses, go out to different aspects of cities that, whether it be suburbs, whether it be, in small towns, things like that, and then, in the cities and then stuff like that, and get more of a broad and more of an in-depth analysis about people's aspects of political ideologies, how that links into how they see music. So, as I was saying about that, going back to the very liberal all the way to conservative it's interesting because maybe it was just a thing where, and they also stated that this is a liberal arts college. So I think it would be also interesting to know that notion of the ones that were saying they're very liberal to somewhat liberal, were they actually saying that just to be part of the bandwagon, the crowd, or they actually have conservative views? That's also another thing to, put into the perspective about these type of research too, which would be, quite interesting to see, to understand things like that. All right, so here we go to the other aspects about this research. Okay, so this person went on to say that they used historical representation to, explain about their thoughts as far as the aspect of politics and music. So the first real instance in which mass social movement used music to their advantage in the ways of this was in 1934. At the time, around 400,000 mill workers joined forces and went on strike for better working conditions. and higher wages, the largest collector strike in U.S. history. So, other researchers that did this research in 2001 found a significant, and of course I will provide the source and the sources that I have in this episode, found a significant link between the presence of radio stations then and a burgeoning industry and the presence of a labor strike. If a southern country had a radio station, then it was extremely likely that the textile mill workers of that county would go on strike. These mill workers were significantly influenced by the pro-labor music that was played on the radio, leading them to take political action and protest. The role that music played in creating conditions that were right for politically motivated labor protests cannot be understated. However, music played an even prominent role in the social upheavals of the 60s. So it's quite interesting because, folk music traditionally, is one of those two coin things. So on the essence, it as I stated previously about the impact of folk music and the interesting lineage of folk music, it covers and it talks about the traditions of a country, the traditions of what they find interesting. But on the same time, it talks about issues, particularly that typically is political issues of that nation, and the aspect going back to what it was stated by what I was saying about Plato, that call to action, primitive notion of the interlace of what music can, from his perspective, perceive to do that. And I think that's what is represented too, also about what this researcher is stating with the aspect of music from that era. All right, so here we go. Let's go on to the 60s. Since music became intimately connected with the social movements of the 60s, and you typically saw a lot of protest songs from this era. So starting with the anti-war movement, 2008 was more research about this, captures the relationship when you see footage from the 1960s and the early 70s. It's almost accompanied by a protest song from that era. So it argues that music was essential to the anti-war movement. The relative songs of the day fueled individual and collective resistance, as well as promoting feelings of hopelessness and global humanity. Classic songs such as Fortunate Song by Creedence Clearwater Revival, Feel Like I'm Fixin' to Die, Rag by Country Joe and the Fish, I Ain't Marching Anymore by Phil Ox, and many others all provided lyrics to the protests of their disdain towards Vietnam. There are political message in that. So the lyrics of the Country Joe and the Fish song says it all, is which is stated in this research. Says, and it's 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a dang. Next stop is Vietnam, and it's 5, 6, 7, open up the pearly gates. There ain't no time to wonder why. Whoopee, we're all going to die. So the social movement that is most closely associated with the conveyance of a political message through the music, however, is the civil rights movement. States that civil rights songs, so this was a Tigger, 2010, doing research about that, stated that civil rights songs are progressive. They seek to move society forward. And so the research of 2001 added that the repetitive singing of these songs forms a ritualistic, that is, bond between members of the group, whether they are black or white. The forward-moving aspect of this by Trigger that did this research in 2010 speaks of can be seen in civil rights staples such as A Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke, We Shall Overcome, and Michael Rowe, The Boat Ashore by Pete Seeger. Clearly, songs achieve their political goals. All right, so of course not everyone is supportive of this association between music and politics. There have been many other instances of criticism since Plato's initial statements. Critics have always been concerned about music's potential mind-altering behavior changes of power. Peterson and Christensen of 87, as well as Dentsoff of 70, dictated that the options of several individuals regarding rock music as both an atheist and communistic are turning the younger generations rapid. And so, all right. So there's a theory that when I read this, it came to mind. So back when I was getting my degree in communications, to particularly with my aspects of going for visual communications and merging all those things together. So a theory that I had to do, I was doing research on that interests me, and I think that's one of the good aspects, which is unfortunate how the state of college is. It's not really. It's one of those things you gotta understand that there's different paths outside of college, there's to be successful. But needless to say, it's important, the aspect of research, and that to me that's important, to do research and because at the heart of the matter for me, how I see research is finding things out, educating yourself, and digging down deep to the bottom to finding the truth about things. And so out of this, there's a very interesting communication theory called cultivation theory that I'm going to talk in the later segment about this, how I think it examples of the ideas of how things are cultivated in the mind as far as what you perceive from media, and then particularly how that relates to music and my thoughts on that. All right, so here we go. All right, so Fox and Williams of 74 also encountered a similar sentiment. Some individuals thought that music of the 60s and 70s would destroy America as we know it. These opinions then physically manifest themselves into the form of censorship. This censorship was not so much a banning of specific words that I said, but a banning of broad political ideals. It was initially seen in the era of the McCarthyism and the McCarthy's House of the Un-American Activities Committee, which blacklisted, and I mentioned this in other podcast episodes, particularly when I was talking about the American folk artists series that I did, is listening about this issue. So blacklisted the Weavers, a popular group headed by Peter Seeger, who professed left-leaning sentiments. McCarthy was afraid of the political message that could be conveyed through their songs. And more recent times, so this kind of is quite interesting. So with the aspect of how 9/11 changed the sentiment for a time about the aspect of patriotism and all of this, and how showing pride in your country, what that actually means. So Clear Channel, a large radio station company, banned all their stations from playing music that was deemed as un-American out of 9/11. That's quite interesting. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go into the aspect of other countries, particularly the country that it was doing that made an aspect of, not polling, but the aspect of mention in this research is Norway. So Neerland, 2016, makes an attempt at tying music genres to political ideology through his research. However, it is only observational and correlative. Neerland of 2016 conducted a survey on members of the youth wings of 5 Norwegian political parties, ranging from the far-left Communist Party to the far-right Fascist Party. Participants were marked to rank 41 music genres in order to their favorite to their least favorite. Which is interesting, it's that polarization of extremes where there's no middle ground. That's quite interesting about understanding that aspect of it too, and why that was. So participants were asked to rank, as I stated, rank 41 music genres in order to the favorite to the least. The left-leaning parties identified indie rock, punk, and protest songs amongst their top 5 favorite, while the right-leaning parties identified mainstream rock, hip-hop, and dance as some of their common favorites. So Netherlands found that the left-leaning parties consistently ranked dance-related genres as their least favorite, which was a favorite of the right-wing parties. And the right-wing parties rated punk as one of their least favorite genres. So a favor of the more liberal parties. So additionally, Netherlands found that when asked the question, would you say that music has any influence on your political engagement or your opinion of political issues, liberal parties responded in the affirmation of 54% at the time. Netherlands' 2016 research results show at least a strong relationship between several music genres and political ideologies, as well as the phenomenon of music impacting the political positions of the listener. All right, so Fox and Williams in 1974 found that conservative students like current political hits and easy listening significantly more than liberal students, at a rate of 28.7% and more than 26.2% more respectively. Liberal students, on the other hand, enjoyed folk, blues, and protest music significantly more than their conservative peers. And it's, quite interesting how that still kind of, even though this research was conducted in the 70s, it still kind of mirrors the aspect of how things are seen as of today. So Fox and Williams of 74 found no relations of statistical significance in the regards of the enjoyment of either rock or country music. So Stinger's research of 2017, this goes into what I was mentioning about campaign music. So research found a predictive relationship between 5 genres and political orientations. Those 5 genres were as follows: rap, hip-hop, rock, alternative, pop, and religious music. Stinger of 2016 additionally found in the research, having conducted her research during the 2016 presidential campaign season. Stinger of 2017 with this research was able to discover correlations between several genres and candidate preferences. On the Democratic side, Clinton supporters correlated positively with rap, hip-hop, and negatively with rock music, while Sanders supporters only correlated negatively religious groups. On the Republican side, Trump supporters correlated positively with rock music, while Cruz supporters correlated positively with religious music and negatively with rap hip-hop. So the findings of both Fox and Williams of 74 identified differences in genre popularities across ideological lines. And Stinger of 2017, who showed correlations between genres and candidates' preferences, either liberal or conservative, lend credence to the possible existence of music to political ideological research. Relationships, that is. Okay, so here we go. So here is the aspects of misinterpretation of lyrics and what that leads to. All right, so they're giving examples of this. So Densoff and Levin of 71 provided the initial research in the area of lyrical interpretation, and their findings are still considered to be an authority. Densoff and Levin of 71 sought to investigate the lyrical interpretation of the song Eve of Destruction. So this was a protest song by Barry McGuire that criticized many developments of the 1960s. Most particularly, it highlighted the Vietnam War and the radical violence, that is. So Densoff and Levin of 71 distributed a questionnaire in 65 during the height of the song's popularity. So college students at San Francisco were polled about this. To add on to this, university, as I was talking about, it's particularly with the San Francisco University is where they went to. So a population they deemed would be more supportive of such a song due to their liberal leanings. Densoff and Levin of 71 discovered that only 14%, and it's quite interesting what they found because of their assumption of how they thought these students would perceive the song. So it's 14% of respondents correctly interpreted the theme of the song. Their findings have been anecdotally replicated several times among the other musicians and politicians. So Densoff of 70 relates the story of Glenn Campbell, who covered Universal Soldier. So, Glenn Campbell was a country artist, country legend particularly. So his song, Universal Soldier, a dedicatedly anti-war song. Campbell was quoted as saying, "Drive car burners should be hanged." Obviously, Campbell didn't understand the meaning of this song. It's what is being said in this. It's quite interesting. So Dewberry and Millen of 2014 show the trend among politicians who incorrectly use campaign songs whose true meanings run with the antithetical aspects to their campaign platform. So what it's saying is misinterpreting the lyrics of the song or the meaning of the song to prove a point of what the politics of politicians, particularly presidents, stand on as far as their views about society and their views to relate to the American people. All right. So here we go. So it shows this trend: songs whose true meaning run to their campaign platforms. Reagan incorrectly interpreted "Born in the USA" as being an intensively patriotic song, when in reality it was an anti-Vietnam War song. Clinton also incorrectly interpreted his campaign song of "Don't Stop" as being progressive. In reality, it was about overcoming an unfaithful relationship. So there are several factors that contribute to an incorrect interpretation of that lyric. It's quite interesting too about what they not nudge at they unfaithful aspect of couldn't wish to forget how it's irony and not understanding that and not getting that point of how he's notorious with his extramarital affairs. That's quite funny and it's very interesting. All right. And it leads us to say with the mudslinging that goes on today, as far as this is nothing new, as far as, but it's just more of an anti of what goes on today in politics, particularly you got to see it as when you get into that notion of getting to the sensationalism, yellow journalism, so to speak, of aspect of, oh, I did this about my opponent, and I'm this and and then particularly what's going on with Kamala Harris and Trump, you gotta beg the question: who really cares about the issues? Who really is? Who really wants to conduct change? And it was quite interesting, how it's unfortunate. This is the tapestry of the Democratic left, of not really focusing on the issues and not really hearing and understanding what the American people are going through, and just saying things to pander to somebody in order to get votes. But when in actuality, they're only looking for personal aspects of their selfish needs. Now, needless to say, there's problems on both ends with Republicans too, and then Democrats. I would be. It just wouldn't be ethically sound of me to not notice that and not say that. Be just as bad as just saying the aspect of what is unfortunately typical only on the Democratic side of only seeing what you want to see, But, and then, of course, from Trump, from the point of view, some of his standings aren't the best, but he really cares and he really wants to get down in the root of everything. And I think that's what's really important to see as far as the aspect of the reality of, political parties, of who is really trying to make changes, who is looking at the policies and the aspect of what we're facing as a nation and wanting to make real change. And then if they can't solve those problems, trying to figuring out the best diplomatic way to get to that next point. And then there you go. All right, so here we go. Get back to this research. All right, so Roots of 86 writes that what seems sentimental under careful analysis may be moving and thought-provoked in a private, intimate moment. In other words, personal factors and emotions of the listeners can change the meaning of the song. Wolf and Haferman of 1996 showed how this can play out through their study of the Beatles song All You Need Is Love. They asked students to interpret the meaning of the song's lyrics, and several responded that it made them think of a deceased friend or relative, not at all what the song is really about. A final way in which lyrics can be interpreted incorrectly is due to the influence of the artist. Many times the listener perceives of the artist significantly, their perceptions of the artist significantly changes their interpretation of their song's lyrics. So back to Root of 86 writes that many times a songwriter may create a persona and the composition which clashes with the persona of the performer. When this happens, listeners are unable to remedy the two personalities and instead interpret the lyrics through their perception. So Platoff of 2005 shows that this can happen through the analysis of two similar songs released in generally the same time, Revolution by the Beatles and Street Fighting Man by the Rolling Stones. Both songs spoke of the protests during the 1960s, and both in some way expressed either the band's lack of involvement or lack of desire to participate. In Revolution, John Lennon lyricized, "Don't you know you can count me out," of the protest. Mick Jagger in Street Fighting Man sang, "Cause in sleepy London town, there's just no place for a street fighting man." Despite expressing similar sentiments, the Beatles song was, it wasn't well liked in the media, and the needless to say, in the media and the Rolling Stones song. I'm sorry, I'm misconstruing that. The Beatles song was well liked in the media, why the Rolling Stone song was not. So this was due to the Beatles being seen as spokesmen for a generation. In the case, they were in conflict, while the Rolling Stones weren't, and they were also perceived as having more in-depth lyrics. The listeners assumed that what Mick Jagger said wasn't really what he meant. So as listeners can both understand what the artist is saying in their musical composition, then actually interpret the lyrics, they may be prone to political influence of the song. All right. So, and then I'm going to end on this to rev up the point of another example, the point of missing the lyrics. So, and then I'm going to go into the cultivation theory. So, Dewberry and Millen of 2014 provided a prime example of this phenomenon, and the phenomenon of being influenced incorrectly by the music. It says provide a example of this by Pumped Up Kids by Foster the People. It says it was driven by an upbeat, positive, and poppy sound. The meaning of the song was widely perceived to be positive. However, the lyrics revealed that it is about an angry teen contemplating a school shooting. So clearly this is quite the barrier to the dismantling of the political ideology in the song. If the melody and the rhythm can be completely changed, the lyrical meaning, then the political statement can be received accurately. And that's quite interesting, that happens a lot. And then, when I initially heard that song, it that's what it seems like. And then, finding out through this research and understanding, it's quite interesting how that takes a different toll when you get into the heart of the matter of it. And, when I found this out, it also begs the question, it also reminded me of Semi-Charmed Life by Third Eye Blind. When you get into listening to the lyrics of that song, it's a lot of debauchery going on. And it is quite interesting, too, with, how a song like The Police, I'll Be Watching You, and then Feel It in the Air Tonight, how those are seen as songs of love and romance, but in actuality, they're brooding and they come from a heartache. All right, so here we go. Cultivation theory. So what is this? It says this was a theory composed originally by G. Gerbner and later expanded upon G. Gerbner and Gross of 76. So they began research in the mid-60s, and in their research in their searching or in their endeavors to study media effects, specifically whether watching television influences the audience's ideas and perceptions of everyday life. And if so, how is this and why? So cultivation theory states that high-frequent viewers of television are more sustainable to media messages and the belief that they are real and valid. So heavy viewers are exposed to more violence and therefore are affected by the term coined of the mean world syndrome, which is, as stated, the belief that the world is far worse than it actually is. And it's quite interesting because it begs the question of the reality of situation of, does music fall into that realm too? And so of how it's important to also keep in mind of this too, of the notion of the corruption aspect of where that leads to the mental state of music and youth. So, it also leads to the aspect of the reality of the situation, how things can change when you talk to people, speak to people, when you experience things. How does that relate to your ideology about things, particularly with music? How does that change your point of view about how you view the world? And also when you listen and you break everything down, strip everything down away from the artist, how does that interpret your view about songs? And so it also goes and begs another question. This cultivation theory begs another question that people aren't born in a vacuum. That they have their own thoughts and experiences, and it is one of those things that you give credit where credit is due, that people are more mindful, that people are are more, needless to say, are more aware of things, or is it the fact that you're begging the question, people are more gullible than begging to the notion that people are more gullible, so they're more susceptible. No, they're more susceptible. That is, tongue-tied there, to believing in these messages. And so, if that is the case, what does it factor in about the aspect of children and songs and children and the media? So, what does this say about the aspects of the parental role of what is, where that, at least with their child and their child's development of how they perceive the world too? And it's one of those things where, that's not always the reality of the case, but, being a good parent takes the notions of knowing what your kids are doing, what they're listening to, whether, what's everything about. And then also talking and taking the measures and the steps of knowing the reality of what reality of what things, how things actually work, and then, knowing the difference. And then also, this also begs the question too to me about the aspects of how that ties into the complex of using the means of the real reality of buying in on the media companies, buying in on the reality of betting that they are attracting the low, low common factor, and then a primal aspect of calling people to action as in not questioning something because of that sheep mentality of following the crowd because that seems popular to do without wanting to understand the true nature of something. And then the aspect of going along to the psychological aspect of breaking out of your comfort zone and what that can do psychologically as far as the well-being of understanding and interpreting things, and then understanding and interpreting your political views about the world around you, where you take a stance on that, and paying attention to the issues of today and the issues which you're facing, which you're facing, and how you how you maneuver around that. So, what am I saying? So, for instance, I think a very concrete mentality to sum up and wrap everything up is from a monetary point of view. So, of course, and then with this, there's nuances to that. So, typically, for a financial point of view, as far as money and spending, there's two thoughts. It's either being conservative with your perspective of saving and working and knowing where your money is going and how to learning the tools and the skills needed to be financially free and financially sound, versus somebody that really doesn't want to face the reality of situation of their means of how they're living, and they don't want to be accountable what they're doing, and so just spend without the notice of really trying to dig in deep and take care of their responsibilities. And that, there's something to think about when you break everything down with the aspects of politics and music. So, what do you guys think? To one more thought. So, again, it's respective to do research. It's respective that this person acknowledges that more research is needed. But it's also important to know that people are multi-layered, whether some people want to admit that or not. And it's unfortunate that sometimes that's not embraced in society, and that music doesn't necessarily measure how you think politically. And it's just very interesting how politics surfaces itself and music by misinterpreting things. And then how that leads to the aspect of culture and music, and how people perceive you when you listen to a certain genre of music, and the thought process behind that. All right, so I'm very interested to know what you all think about this. Of course, leave comments. Where it be YouTube, we would greatly appreciate it. I'm working and building a rapport on there, and working to build a community on that, a community on there. And I would like to know, just dive in. Let me know what you think. Leave comments, and then if you'd like to email me, feel free. I will have that link for you, and then also Substack too. Tune in, turn up, and definitely take care out there. Bye-bye now.